And the St. Louis Blues fall to the Chicago Blackhawks 4-2. Let's talk about what happened in the game.
Hey, this is Brayden Chen. Subscribe to Lock On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to Locked On Blues. I'm your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today on Locked On Blues, I'm going to talk to you about the Blues and the Blackhawks and the post-game show, as well as Cam Fowler's extension that did happen during the contest tonight. So we're going to talk about that. We have a busy episode today because I want to do a reaction video because this was such a big game considering the players that the Blues had in the lineup. So we have a lot to dive into. I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So obviously the third period was not good. Okay. To say it's not good was a little bit of an understatement. The Blackhawks were able to score 4 goals, of course, one of them being an empty net goal at the end of the game. And the difference was the goaltenders. You had Jordan Binnington in net for the first 2 frames. And obviously, when you have Binnington in net, you can expect a brick wall, right? Now, in the third period, and again, I know that, Coach Montgomery wanted him to play, but it was Will Cranley. And I think at the end of the day, it's just a difference of experience. And Binnington would have been able to make most of those saves, if not all. However, that obviously was not what happened tonight. But I do want to talk about something that was good. And that was in the first frame. Dalibor Dvorsky, he was able to get an unassisted goal. And the thing about Dvorsky is, and I've talked about this on my show with who he is as a player, he was accelerating so much in the AHL. I mean, he was an all-star for crying out loud. He played well with Sweden, and he's such a good player. I really encourage you to look at his tapes because he has a lot of talent. The 2 games that he played with the Blues last season, obviously he didn't accumulate any points from them. However, he still has so much talent that we haven't seen yet in the NHL level. And you have to remember, too, while the AHL is a developmental league, you're not going to always be NHL ready off the bat. But this is a player that I do believe should make the team. And listen, maybe I'm a little bit biased, and I definitely am because I do actually like his game a lot. But I really think he needed this goal tonight. And again, it's one of those things for me where, he's playing on the third line tonight, right? I would have maybe liked to seen him maybe play on the second, but they did have Brayden Schenn on the second line. But I think overall, if he were to make the team, it would be on that third line because the third line is where there's the most opportunity. And that's what I found really interesting about this game was about the lines. The first line, you had Robert Thomas centering, to the left was Bushi, and then to the was Snuggie. And I actually think that that is going to be the first line that we see on opening night. Jimmy Snuggard, he did have a couple good shots on goal. Not going to deny that. Bushi looked a little lifeless, okay? I, he's all right, but I just want more out of Bushi, okay? I want to see him explode on the ice. I thought Parayko played well tonight. Cam Fowler obviously played well, got an extension during the game. So we'll talk about that. Another player that I wanted to see more from was Logan Mailloux. Now, again, I think it just kind of goes to show when you have a really good goaltender in net, the defense looks a lot better. But I thought that there were times in the third frame, and this is kind of where you get to see maybe some of the weaknesses of players defensively when you don't have a guy like Jordan Binnington in net. I thought that Mayu was standing around a little bit too much and not being as aggressive man to man. I think in a game like this or any type of game, you need to just be a tad more aggressive. I mean, I think Spencer Knight, the goalie for the Blackhawks, he played a phenomenal game, okay? While the 2 goals did go in, and we'll talk about the second goal, he did play a fantastic game. And the Blues, I mean, especially in the last couple of minutes, were really pressing up against the Blackhawks. So I think, that kind of just goes to show. But another goal that we saw today is from our captain. And Brayden Schenn, I mean, let me tell you, you know, you have Matthew Joseph with, zone entry to Parayko. And then he finds Jake Neighbors. And then he was able to pass to Braden Shen, who was able to find the back of the net. And that just goes to show how smooth and beautiful passing the puck can be. I always say this, there are certain players on the Blues that I think are a little bit too selfless, not selfish, selfless with the puck, where they're always passing it around like a Robert Thomas, and they just want to take that shot on goal. But I thought that sequence of passing is exactly what you need to do. And that was such a great goal for the captain and such a great goal for the Blues. Now, what I will say is that Bushi, he did have a couple good looks, right? And I know that, we didn't really see maybe much from Robert Thomas in terms of, as much opportunity. But what I will say is Spencer Knight, I mean, he just continued to impress, and he was able to make so many good stops. So let's go see some comments because I want to have you react as well. Feel free to join the show. So Dustin said, I felt like after Shen scored, he kind of let up some. And I agree. Listen, I'm going to take the positives. And that goal was a positive, right? You had Dvorsky and Braden Shen score. It was a 2-0 game heading into the final frame. And again, you have to remember when Binnington is not in the net, you're not going to have the same, let's say for how it is, insurance, right? That means that the defense is going to have to play more man to man. They're going to have to play a little bit tougher. And we didn't see that from the defense. Now, granted, a lot of the defensemen on the ice tonight were guys that you would most likely see in the AHL, with a few exceptions. It was kind of half and half. But again, this is something that the Blues need to work on. And preseason, at the end of the day, it's not about how many, wins did you get in your preseason. The Blues haven't won a preseason game. Okay? They are 0-3 in the preseason. How does that make you feel? Does that concern you? Do you feel like they're due for a win? Because if you want my opinion, I think getting a win would be nice, and I want them to have a win. But at the end of the day, I think there's different fundamental things that they need to work on. For example, and this is something that we saw in game 7 against Winnipeg, is while, yes, you kind of can't prevent an empty net goal at the end of the game, right? That's inevitable. That happens all the time in hockey. You need to be sharp in the final frame of play. You have to be more aggressive. And I think that for the Blues, right? When you have these preseason games, especially the early on preseason games, you kind of get a mixture of both AHL and NHL, and it doesn't always have the best flow to it. And towards the end of the preseason, when you get mostly the NHL guys, yes, obviously I expect them to win and I expect them to play harder and I expect the game to look a lot different. But it's really hard for me to say that and to be as critical when a lot of these players are not going to be NHL ready. Now, I say that, but then I look at my first and second line, and on the second line, it was Captain Braden Shen, and to his left was Neighbors, and to his right was Joseph. And I look at the fourth line, and it's Oscar Sundquist centering, which I do think he's going to end up getting the job of being the fourth line center, by the way. To the right was our Aussie Nathan Walker, who has, by the way, a 2-year contract extension, and then left. So mostly NHL ready, right? And the third line is really interesting, right? Because we have Dvorsky, again, the guy that scored the first goal. To the right was Justin Carbonneau. Carbs got the first preseason goal, by the way, of all NHL teams. So that's kind of a cool fact. And I do think he's going to maybe make the team and play about 7 games. And here's the thing. Did he stand out tonight? No. Did he do all right? Yeah, sometimes when you blend in, you're fine, right? Yeah, Dustin, I'm on the same page as you. I'm still trying to figure out how that third Blackhawks goal counted. And the refs didn't blow the whistle as the fighting starting out. I agreed. It was really odd. It was a little bit choppy. Obviously, if it was a regular NHL game, not just preseason, I'm sure that, there would have been, Toronto looking at it, in New York, all that stuff, right? It's preseason. We have another comment saying, not concerned. Keep switching the lineup. Play the young guys while they can. We need to see who's ready to play the third line right wing. And if Snuggie really has a lock on the first line right wing. And I like that comment because I feel like when it's preseason, that is your opportunity to really switch up the lines. You don't want to have set in stone lines this early. Maybe you do. I don't know. But I think for the Blues, we have a couple of things that are set in stone, like Robert Thomas being the first line center, Jordan Binnington being your 1A in net, having Parayko and Fowler, the other way around, being your first pair, right? There are certain things that we have set, and we know that as fans, we know that as analysts, we know that. But here's my concern. Are we really going to have Braden Shen as our 2C this season? And if Braden Shen is the 2C this season, how would you feel about it? Let me know your thoughts and your reactions on the game while I tell you about my friends over at FanDuel, because I love to read what you think about what happened during the contest. But let's go talk about my friends at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Personally, I'm a same game parlay type of girl. Tomorrow it is football Sunday. Yes, we made it to week 4. Can you believe it? It's week 4. Well, I always bet on the birds, right? And I would do Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown, Saquon Barkley over on rushing. Okay. Put $5 on, you can win $5. I don't like to bet big, but I always like to win. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting fanduel.com to get started. That's fanduel.com to place your first $5 bet. So we're reacting to the game and we're talking about maybe adjustments that need to be made. We're talking about the fact that the Blues have yet to win a preseason game. I mean, it's only been 3 games, but still not a big fan of that. I'm also not a big fan of being up 2-0 and having another team score 4 goals on you, one of which, of course, was an empty net goal, but still makes me a little bit not happy. Now, what I will say is this. There were things tonight that made me happy, like Dvorsky's goal. But another big talking point that happened during the game came from Cam Fowler. Cam Fowler gets a 3-year contract extension, 6.1 milli AAV. That is a lot of money for Fowls. But what I will say is this. I like that it's 3 years. First off, I think that's actually a pretty fair timeline, right? I mean, I hate to be like Cam Fowler, he's old. Well, okay. Let's come down with the old talk, but in hockey, like he's a little bit older. I mean, he's 33. I would hate to say, "Oh, in real life if you're 33, you're old," but in hockey, that's kind of getting to the top of the shelf life, right? 6.1 milli AAV. Honestly, he deserves it. I know there's some people that are upset about it. He doesn't deserve that much money. That's a lot of money. The Blues are throwing money away. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Well, tell me this. Why is Cam Fowler one of your best defensemen on the team? And shouldn't one of your best players in a certain position get the money? That's pretty reasonable to me. I think when, you have different people freaking out about money and cap, and I understand, but we just had a conversation on Locked On Blues yesterday, actually, where we talked about how it's more important to have a bunch of good players than to pay an all-star type of player $12 million. And yes, I'm talking about Mitch Marner. Um, the point is that yes, it is a lot of money, but he's not making more than Robert Thomas or Jordan Cairo. So at the end of the day, yes, two things can be true. Now, again, if it was 5.1 AAV, okay. And I understand too, there's some comments right now about, Broberg and Holloway being extended. But I feel like there is a plan from Doug Armstrong. And that is something that a lot of people forgot when I saw those comments on social media not too long ago. Do you really think Doug Armstrong, the general manager and president of hockey operations for the St. Louis Blues, doesn't have a plan? And let me tell you why. when you have a player like a Philip Broberg and a Dylan Holloway, and Doug constantly says how this really sped up the Blues' process, why would they go anywhere? Obviously, they're going to get paid. Now, the question that you might be having is how? How will the, cap space be freed up? I don't know. I don't want to make assumptions. We don't know, right? I don't know, you don't know. But do you really think Doug would risk not having both of them come back? I mean, I think that Doug has something that he's cooking. And I also got reports that Doug will still be staying with the organization in a role. So he's not going anywhere. While he won't be the GM, he will still be heavily involved. So I guess what I am saying to you is when you have a general manager like a Doug Armstrong, you can't focus on how will they find space. They will find it. There is a plan. And personally, do I think Cam Fowler deserved the 6.1 from the way that he played? Yeah. But if we're talking about overall, do I think that the team should have given him a little bit less so that way they had some more money? Absolutely. Two things can be true. I hate that the NHL has such a tight cap space. I hate that this isn't like the NFL's where it seems like they can throw around as much money as they want, but unfortunately it's not. Every year though, what I will say is the cap does increase, so at least that's a positive, right? But I do understand those comments. It goes both ways. But again, Cam Fowler was so solid for the Blues last season, and I can't help but wonder how he's going to be this upcoming season, right? Because I feel like last year was just, incredible. I mean, he had 36 points, 9 goals, and 27 assists. He was plus 19. He played about 21 minutes on the ice. Come on and tell me that's not a guy that you want to stay with your team. Now, again, will he have that same kind of season? I don't know. I mean, he's put up big numbers before. I mean, he's had seasons with 48 points, right? With 10 goals and 38 assists. So he is an assist machine, but evidently, I don't know how he's going to perform, and I hope he does well. This comment has me laughing. Time to talk about trading Kyrou again. Yeah, no, that's not happening. Kyrou is staying. I think that the national media really likes to talk about trading Kyrou because they're able to stir up some drama. And I think it is the most annoying, unprofessional, and quite honestly, not what journalism is when you constantly bring up a player to trade that is not going anywhere. The Blues are not trading Jordan Kyrou. And I know that comment was a joke, but I'm sure there's going to be people that are going to say, oh, well, to sign Broberg and Holloway, you have to trade Kyrou. That's not happening. They're not going to trade him. I'm telling you. Trust me. Listen to me. They're not trading Jordan Kyrou. But I do expect Jordan Kyrou to have a fantastic season, hopefully being on the same line as Dylan Holloway. Listen, there's still a lot of what ifs, uh, but uh, again, we don't know what the final lines and pairs are going to be, but I'm really, really, really hoping Holloway and Kyrou are both able to play on the same line. Now, I want to give a plug to my show, Locked On Blues. That's what you're watching now. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and leave a comment down below. It helps me out so much. I am on Twitter at Locked On Blues because again, I am obsessed with the Blues. This is my team. So we talk Blues every single day, and I have a really bad Robert Thomas knockoff jersey because I am going to spend $400 on the new sweater. Which, by the way, those sweaters look sick on the ice tonight. Woo! I was loving it. It actually looks really good on my ESPN Plus that I pay for out of market, $10.99 a month. But it's worth it. I like it. I get to watch my Blues whenever I want, so I'm always happy about that. So, what is my overall takeaway from tonight's game? Well, Spencer Knight, hate to say it, looked great in net. Jordan Binnington, love to say it, looked great in net. Dvorsky, it was a beautiful goal from Dalibor Dvorsky. And I have to say, the way that Shen's goal was set up was stellar, and I want to see more of that. But I want to see the guys bring the pressure, bring the energy in the final frame. And there's going to be games where Joel Hofer gets the start. And you're not going to have, no disrespect to Hofer, but he's not at Bennington. Obviously, no one's at Bennington besides Bennington. And when you have somebody in net that's not Jordan Bennington, you have to play tougher and harder defensively. And I think what I saw tonight was players maybe losing some of that energy. I don't want to say that they were tired, but the Blackhawks did kind of wear them out in that final frame. And look, it says a lot about Chicago too. I mean, you're able to come back from being down from 2 goals. Like, that's something to take note of too. Well, I know this is the preseason. You had a lot of your really good players out on the ice tonight. I mean, again, let me remind you, you had Bushi out there, Thomas, you had Neighbors, Shenny, you had Snuggy, you had Dvorsky, and I know they's not an NHL guy, but still. You had Sonny, Walker, Fowler, Pareko, Binnington, Cranley. Cranley was in it. Oh, you had Adam Juracek, and he was all right, but he didn't stand out to me. I'm just so frustrated. I mean, Mayu, like some of these guys didn't stand out to me. It's frustrating. It's really, really, really frustrating. I mean, at the end of the day, what are you going to do about it, right? There's nothing that can be done, but it definitely is frustrating. I sometimes feel like I don't know. I just get so frustrated watching the Blues. And Darkness says, I disagree. There were stretches last year where Hofer was better than Bennington. This is a good thing. And it is. And I want Hofer to succeed. I've had the opportunity to speak to Joel Hofer, and he's told me that Bennington is such a good mentor to him and that he learns a lot from Binner. And I like that. And I want them to succeed. I want both of them to succeed. You know, the most successful teams in the NHL have multiple goalies that could be starting goalies. And it's not just a Tatum. I am explaining that maybe let's go. What's a really bad team in the NHL? Hmm. What's like a really bad team that doesn't do anything? Oh, yeah, the Buffalo Sabres. Sorry, I wanted to make that joke and thought it was funny. But like, let's go say they had our boy Joel Hofer. Yeah, the Flyers, them too. Let's go say they had Joel Hofer. Well, he would get the starting goalie job, right? Goalies are so hard to find in modern NHL because the truth is there's not a lot of guys that can compete. You know, it's always been very interesting to me to see how goalies develop. I feel like the Blues got really lucky. And again, it just actually not lucky necessarily because, again, it goes to show the drafting of Dougie A. But I mean, goalies are so hard to develop. They're so hard to develop. Let me say that again, folks, because it is true. So the fact that the Blues have a Jordan Bennington and a Joel Hofer gives them such an advantage for the upcoming season. But I still think, too, with just the amount of experience that Jordan Bennington has on Joel Hofer, is why I'm saying the defense just needs to play a little bit tougher and harder, considering the fact that, you know, you have Jordan Bennington, who's a Stanley Cup champion, won the Four Nations, will most likely be the starting goalie for Team Canada in the Olympics. Like, while two things can be true, they're both good goalies. Obviously, Jordan Bennington has the advantage. And I'm not saying that Joel Hofer can't get there one day. I want him to be a cup champion because that means that we would win the Stanley Cup again. But evidently, you have a goalie with more experience right now, and that is Binner the winner. So let's take a look at the upcoming schedule for Blues games. I like doing these little post-game shows. I have missed this so much. And luckily, it's the weekend, so I could actually like stay up and not be too tired even though I have like a 7 a.m. workout class. Anyways, the Blues will be hosting the Stars on Tuesday, and then the Blues will be hosting the Sens on Thursday. The Blues then go to Chicago for their final preseason game, which should look like an NHL ready game, and that will be on Saturday the 4th at Chicago. Then on Thursday, October 9th, the Blues will be having the Minnesota Wild in town for the season opener here at home. So, yes, it is going to be very exciting here in Blues land. I'm excited to talk to you all season long. We're going to have a lot of fun. And I am just so ready. I'm frustrated about how tonight's game ended. I'm not going to lie to you. I am frustrated. However, um, it doesn't count. So, that's that. I'm expecting more cuts to be made tomorrow, and I will keep you posted on Twitter about them. Like always, like, subscribe, and we always do this thing here in Locked On Blues when we end every single episode saying one thing and one thing only, and that is 1, 2, 3. Let's go Blues.